Good afternoon. You're watching the Debka File, a weekly roundup of exclusive news, insight, and analysis from the Middle East, broadcast to you live from the heart of the region. Coming up on the program today, Kim Jong-un may leave Khamenei as the only leader refusing to discuss the nuclear program. Iran triples ballistic missile production. UK wages an intelligence and diplomatic war on Russia. Assad and Erdogan win in Syria. A U.S. Syrian proxy will push back at the next Syrian-Iranian offensive. Turkey threatens move on Manbij. No breakthrough on Iran nuclear talks between the EU and Iran. Hamas plans to launch a wave of terror in Israel. And now to our top stories. The invitation from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to U.S. President Trump to discuss denuclearization is a breakthrough, which leaves Iran's Ayatollah Ali Khamenei as the only world leader to refuse to discuss his country's nuclear program. The Ayatollah is using this to impose Iran's will on the U.S. The North Korean leader realized that facing Trump to discuss the terms was inevitable to preserve his regime. On Friday, Trump posted a tweet that stated, quote, Kim Jong-un talked about denuclearization with the South Korean representatives, not just a freeze. Also, no missile testing by North Korea during this period of time. Great progress being made, but sanctions will remain until an agreement is reached. Meeting being planned. On Sunday, President Trump made these comments outside the White House.
I think North Korea's going to go very well. I think we're going to have tremendous success. It's going to be something very special. We have a lot of support. So I think North Korea is going to go very well. They promised they wouldn't be shooting off missiles in the meantime, as they're looking to denuke. And that'll be great.
U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson also had some comments regarding the upcoming meeting.
With respect to talks with North Korea versus negotiations, and I think this seems to be something that people continue to struggle with, the difference. My comments have been that the conditions are not right for negotiations. We've been saying for some time we're open to talks. President Trump has said for some time that he was open to talks and he would willingly meet with Kim Jong-un when conditions were right and the time was right. And I think in the President's judgment, that time has arrived now. So there's no, in my comments yesterday, I was indicating comments about negotiations, but we've been open for talks for some time.
Now it appears that Khamenei will no longer be able to escape facing the U.S. to renegotiate the changes that Trump is demanding to the deal signed in 2015. Meanwhile, a Revolutionary Guards general indicated that Iran has no interest in renegotiating a deal with Europe or the U.S., and when they are ready to stop trying to negotiate in the Middle East, Tehran would be open to discussing its nuclear and missile programs. Khamenei made his motives clear in a recent speech, explaining why the Islamic Republic is stronger than ever.
دلیل قوت جمهوری اسلامی اینه که 40 سال است که همه دولت‌های مستکبر خبیث دنیا میخوان جمهوری اسلامی رو نابود کنن، از بین ببرن و هیچ غلطی نتوانستن بکنن.
Tehran discarded French President Emmanuel Macron's proposition to make changes for the 2015 nuclear deal demanded by U.S. President Donald Trump. Last Monday, French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian visited Tehran to persuade Iranian leaders that if they put restrictions on the nuclear deal, Trump might agree to retain it. However, the Iranians were against the proposition. Brigadier General Amir Ali Hajizadeh, Commander-in-Chief of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Aerospace Force, claimed Iran has, quote, increased its missile and defense-related production threefold, despite mounting pressure by the United States and its allies. He went on to say that their enemies' attempts to limit their defense has backfired. This statement was echoed by a representative of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in the Guards Command. Their views represent the greater consensus throughout Tehran for rejecting any proposals for amending the nuclear accord or giving Europe a way to negotiate the missiles program. In 2015, the Iranian delegation threatened to walk out of nuclear talks if their ballistic missile program was up for negotiations. It was banned by the UN Security Council. However, the nuclear accord was saved by former President Barack Obama and former Secretary of State John Kerry with the consent to exclude the missile program. The Russian intelligence is preparing for war against Britain's military intelligence agencies. Putin is confident from his recent win to go against his British attackers. Debka intelligence experts believe the Kremlin will go for British economic interests and intelligence assets in the Middle East and will target the UK-US intelligence partnership. As former spy Skripal and his daughter Yulia, who were both poisoned by a nerve agent, remain in critical condition, London still has not come up with evidence to support the British government's allegations that Moscow and Putin were responsible for the chemical weapons attack. Debka intelligence sources report that the nerve agent is stocked by 20 different countries. Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson spoke at the House of Commons Foreign Affairs Committee meeting and accused Putin of, quote, ordering the attempted assassination of Russian double agent Sergei Skripal in a bid to drum up support for his re-election. Russian ambassador to the UK, Alexander Yakovenko, said that the UK has blamed Russia without any evidence in the spy poisoning affair. He claimed that Russian government did not have any connection to the incident, and the British government has refused to cooperate on the investigation.
Since the day of the incident, and we have not received any official information from the Foreign and Commonwealth Office or police on the investigation thereof. The British authorities refused to provide samples of the chemical substance. At which hospital are Mr. and Mrs. Skripal being treated? We don't have any information. What is their exact diagnosis, condition, and what treatment are they receiving? No information. Is the treatment the same as one provided to Surgeon Nick Bailey? No information. Why has the condition of Mr. Bailey improved while the Mr. and Mrs. Skripal remain in a critical condition? No question.
Theresa May initiated a diplomatic and intelligence war on Russia prior to Russia's elections. At a European Union Council meeting in Brussels, May stated that she would raise the topic of Russian aggression in the summit.
Now, Russia staged a brazen and reckless attack against the United Kingdom when it attempted the murder of 2 people on the streets of Salisbury. I'll be raising this issue with my counterparts today because it's clear that the Russian threat does not respect borders, and indeed the incident in Salisbury was part of a pattern of Russian aggression against Europe and its near neighbours, from the Western Balkans to the Middle East.
May hoped to receive support for sanctions against Russia. Many countries around the world expressed solidarity with the UK. Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar had this to say.
Well, first of all, I want to say that we're all members of the European Union, 28 of us. We're all small countries in many ways, but there are big countries that surround us, and we sometimes come to conflict with them. Russia on security, issues with Turkey at the moment as well, issues with America on trade, and it's very important that we stick together. So, as a fellow member of the European Union, we're going to be in full solidarity with the United Kingdom.
Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz spoke at the council meeting and said this about the attack.
Wir verurteilen diese Giftgasattacke und wir sind solidarisch mit Großbritannien. Und insofern bin ich auch gespannt auf die Sitzung, wo die britische Premierministerin Theresa May auch uns alle darüber informieren wird und sicherlich auch die Informationen, die sie hat, mit uns teilen wird.
On Sunday, the Turkish army took control of the Kurdish city of Afrin in northern Syria as 200,000 Kurds fled the town. Meanwhile, Turkish bulldozers razed the statue of a Kurdish hero in downtown Afrin, and the surrounding buildings were plastered with Turkish flags. The U.S. and Russia tried to dissuade Erdogan from continuing with his plan to take over Afrin, but did little to stop him. Capturing Afrin is stage 1 of Erdogan's strategy of expansion. Now he has the power to demand that Russia and the U.S. give some plans consideration. Debka military sources report that on Saturday, U.S. forces based in northern Syria began redeploying to new positions for defending the Kurdish town of Manbij. General Kenneth McKenzie, director of the Joint Operations Staff, ordered for Marine reinforcements who were transferred to Manbij and U.S. units based in Iraq to cross the border and move towards the Kurdish areas of northern Syria. Meanwhile, eastern Ghouta is facing major setbacks. On Sunday, a spokesman for a rebel group in the region said his group was in negotiations for a ceasefire to protect the civilians. However, Debka file sources reveal that they are negotiating for terms of surrender. The insurgents lack weaponry to defend themselves, and hundreds of civilians have died. Over 25,000 civilians have fled in the past week. The Syrian war has resulted in over 12 million refugees, and 5 million of them have fled across the border.
كل رصاصة كنتوا عم تطلقوها لو تضربوا إرهابي أو لو تقضوا على إرهابي كنتوا عم تغيروا النظام بالعالم. كل سائق دبابة كان عم يتقدم متر للأمام كان عم يغير الخريطة السياسية للعالم.
In January, the U.S. told Moscow, Tehran, and Damascus that any attempts to send troops across the Euphrates River to challenge the U.S.-held Syrian-Iraqi border would be met with U.S. military resistance. Now, the Trump administration is planning a military initiative in Syria. Last week, anti-Assad Syrian troops crossed Jordan towards the southern Syrian town of Daraa. They were recruited at the Syrian refugee camps in North Jordan and are funded by Saudi Arabia. The first troop that crossed from Jordan into Syria coincided with the end of the Eastern Ghouta operation. Chief of the main operational directorate of the Russian General Staff, Colonel General Sergei Rudskoy, also spoke about the escalation taking place in Ghouta.
Мы отмечаем наличие признаков подготовки к возможным ударам. В восточной части Средиземного моря, в Персидском заливе и Красном море созданы ударные группировки морских носителей крылатых ракет.
Pro-Assad forces, along with Russian air and special operations forces and pro-Iranian Shiite militias, will be up against the rebels. If they advance on the Daraa region, it will be their launching pad for an offensive to push U.S. forces out of Al-Tanf. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis is preparing a military strike to dislodge the Syrian Hezbollah hold on southern Daraa. The operation will circumvent Daraa from the east and follow the Daraa-Damascus highway to capture the town of Ezra. Damascus hit back on March 12th when the Syrian Air Force bombed the Syrian troops coming in from Jordan, acting on intelligence from their Russian allies. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov spoke at a conference in Astana and said that any threat from the U.S. to strike Damascus would be unacceptable.
Напоминаем, что любое использование силы в отношении Дамаска на основе надуманных предлогов недопустимо. Прозвучавшая недавно угроза нанесения односторонних военных ударов Соединенными Штатами по Сирии, включая Дамаск, как это было в апреле прошлого года на основе голословных обвинений в применении правительством Сирии химического оружия, неприемлемо и недопустимы.
The U.S.-backed operation in Daraa could achieve three objectives. First, the U.S.-controlled security zone in southeast Syria would double in size. Second, Iranian forces would be distanced from Jordan's northern border with Syria and eastern border with Iraq. Finally, it would support the military buffer zone, which Israel is overseeing in southwest Syria, to prevent Syrian, Iranian, and Hezbollah forces from accessing the Golan border. Turkish President Erdogan was allowed to conquer the Kurdish region of Afrin and drive out the U.S.-backed Kurdish YPG militia. Washington criticized the humanitarian violations that have been committed by the Turkish army, while Erdogan shot back that the U.S. is a detestable partner. Erdogan stated to the Justice and Development Party in Ankara that, quote, "If we are strategic partners, you must respect us and move along with us." He went on to say that the U.S. tried to deceive them, sending 5,000 trucks of weapons there and more than 2,000 trucks of ammunition. Foreign Minister Cavusoglu announced that Turkish Foreign Ministry Undersecretary would meet with the U.S. representative over the next several days.
Münbiş'ten başlayarak Suriye'nin belli bir bölümünü istikrara kavuşturmak. Bu da nasıl olacak? Burada bir çerçeve var, yine anlayış var. Öncelikle buralardan YPG çekilecek. Münbiş'ten örneğin çekilecek. Buraları kim yönetecek? Buraların güvenliğini kim sağlayacak? Bu konuda birlikte çalışacağız. Daha sonra arkadaşlarımız Washington'da bunun toplantısını yaptı. Bu çalışma grubunun yol haritasını biz eğer bir mutabakata bağlarsak o zaman anlaştık diyebiliriz. Şimdi bir anlayış var. Amerikalıların da teklifi var. Peki sadece Münbiç yeterli mi? Hayır. Münbiç'ten önce YPG çıkacak ve burayı istikrara kavuşturacağız. Münbiçli insanlar burayı yönetecekler. Buranın güvenliğini onlar yine sağlayacaklar. Biz onlara yardım edeceğiz. Fakat Münbiç modelini diğer yerlerde de şu anda YPG'nin kontrol ettiği her yerde uygulayacağız.
Debka military and intelligence sources report that a U.S.-Turkish collision could occur if Erdogan captures the Kurdish town of Manbij in northern Syria. Turkish tanks moved into Afrin, and Erdogan has claimed that they will go into all the Kurdish towns east of the Euphrates River until, quote, the terrorist corridor is gone. He was threatening areas held by U.S.-backed Syrian Kurdish forces, which also host U.S. military bases. Erdogan claims that Turkey is ready to go into northern Iraq's Sinjar region, where Turkish Kurdish Workers' Party fighters are based. Erdogan is ready to cross the river and seize all the Kurdish regions of northern Syria and Qamishli. The loss of Manbij would put the U.S.-backed Kurdish gains at risk. Meanwhile, Turkey and Iraq are negotiating for Turkish troops to take bases in the Sinjar region of northern Iraq. Turkish forces could attack the Kurds in northern Syria, which could be of concern to the U.S. military in eastern Syria. A Turkish operation in Syria against Manbij or Kobani would put the U.S. forces at risk, and the 2,500 U.S. troops on 20 bases would be forced to condense into a smaller region. Manbij is the key to U.S. military presence in northeastern Syria and will be the focus of the operation when Turkey and U.S. officials meet in Washington. German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas and French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian met with Prime Minister Netanyahu in Jerusalem to discuss Tehran and concessions that would convince U.S. President Trump not to scrap the Iran nuclear deal. Debka sources report that the two foreign ministers have reported progress in the negotiating process. The Iranians are ready to discuss the European terms, which would require Iran to affirm every 2 years its compliance with restrictions on its nuclear and ballistic development. This would allow U.S. President Trump to avoid throwing out the nuclear accord while allowing him to impose sanctions, which the European Union would support. Israeli President Reuven Rivlin commented on the visit by the French leader.
טוב יעשה העולם כולו כאשר הוא ישים לב שאיראן תומכת בטרור ולכן צריך להסביר לה שתמיכתה בטרור לא תוכל להתקבל בצורה אדישה על ידי העולם החופשי בעיקר, שצרפת היא אחת ממנהיגותיה.
However, the European Union resolutions did not satisfy any of the points that Netanyahu raised at the meeting. This includes getting rid of the sunset clause, which claims that when the accord expires in 2024, Iran will be free of restrictions on its nuclear program and will be allowed to reactivate its centrifuges for enriching uranium. Israel insists on those restrictions becoming permanent so that Iran will never be allowed to make a nuclear weapon. Although Maas and Le Drian told Netanyahu that Tehran could extend the expiration date but would not say for how long, Netanyahu was not satisfied. He stated, quote, Tehran can even today enrich enough uranium at a high level of purity to make atomic bombs. The two foreign ministers were hopeful about persuading Iran to stop developing, manufacturing, and testing long-range missiles on which nuclear warheads could be mounted. Yet Debka sources report that Maas and Le Drian offered no evidence to support a breakthrough. Despite former U.S. presidents' promise to allow inspections anywhere and any time to the International Atomic Energy Agency, Tehran has never given the inspectors access to its military sites. The foreign ministers hope to lure Netanyahu to convince Trump to accept the European plan and refrain from scrapping the deal by turning a new page in the continent's policy towards Israel. Debka sources state that their reports strengthen Netanyahu in his conviction that their initiative offered nothing to appease Israel's concerns about a nuclear Iran. Since early February, the Palestinian Hamas terrorist organization has been described by experts as a declining force, with internal disputes and a loss of credibility over the economic and humanitarian disasters. Last week, however, the truth was revealed that Hamas has been spreading false propaganda to create a sense of tragedy, while meanwhile planning a huge operation. Hamas has an agenda of protests lasting 6 weeks, which will culminate in the May 15th 70th anniversary of Israel's independence, which the Palestinians call Nakba Day. The IDF has reported that the first stage of Hamas' March of Return this past Friday left 17 Palestinians dead and 750 injured. There were no Israeli casualties. Most of the casualties occurred when 15 groups tried to rush the border and attack the IDF with firearms, rocks, firebombs, and explosives. The clashes continued on Saturday with 25 Palestinian casualties. Hamas is planning the protest march over the next 6 weeks, with the next major assault predicted by the IDF to take place on April 17th, the annual Palestinian Prisoner Day. Israel's security chiefs see the potential for the anti-Israel violence to spread to Palestinian areas in Judea and Samaria, with rioting and attacks on Israel targets billed as, quote, peaceful protests. Returning to Gaza, IDF spokesman Brigadier General Ronen Manelis told reporters, quote, "We won't let this turn into a ping-pong zone. If this continues, we will have no choice but to respond inside the Gaza Strip." UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for an inquiry of the 17 Palestinian deaths in riots against the Israeli border. Israel responded that there is no equivalence between a sovereign state acting in self-defense and a terrorist organization that sanctifies the murder and death of Israelis. Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman said there will be no inquiry into the Gaza border deaths as demanded by the U.S. Secretary. He wrote on his Twitter account, quote, "I don't understand the chorus of hypocrites that want a commission of inquiry. They are confused and thought Hamas organized the Woodstock Festival, and we needed to give them flowers." That's it for this week's edition of the Debka File. We'll be back with you next week for exclusive news, insight, and analysis from the Middle East. Thanks for watching.